What's up, guys? So I want to do this video to talk about some of the differences between sumo and conventional deadlifts. So it's basically aimed towards people who are conventional deadlifters who are thinking about switching to sumo. Now there's a lot of similarities between the two lifts. However, there are also some pretty big differences that you need to keep in mind when making this switch. And the biggest problem I usually see with people who make that switch is they basically sumo deadlift with a conventional style of deadlift. So I want to kind of go over some of the bigger differences you need to keep in mind when you're making this transition to hopefully make that transition easier for you. So first thing that I usually see when people line up with the sumo deadlift after conventional is they'll line up with their feet directly forward, just like you would with the conventional. And this isn't going to work. You need to make sure you're getting your feet out at least around about a 45-degree angle is a good starting point. And the reason you need to do this is because if you have it forward, when you go to pull, your knees are going to be in the way, and the bar is going to have to go around your knees. And you have to keep in mind, basically, for every inch that bar is in front of you, the force almost doubles. So you need to keep that bar as tight as possible. So by getting your feet out, this is going to allow you to get into position and for it to come straight up your shin and up your leg without having to go around your knees. So there's some advantages and disadvantages to a wider and a narrower foot position. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about external rotation of the hips. But before that, if you are in a 45-degree angle, that's a pretty good starting position. But you might want to go more out or more in depending on your structure, and you're going to have to play around with it. The thing that you have to keep in mind is the more externally rotated your feet are, the harder it's going to be to externally rotate your hips. And external rotation of the hips is extremely important with the sumo deadlift. So if you're in more, you're going to be externally rotating more, but then your knees might get in the way a little bit more. If you're out more, it'll be easier, it'll be more difficult to externally rotate. It'll be easier if it's in, but then you got your knees to play with. So you got to play around and see kind of what works best for you. Now, for an actual starting position, Benson, if you could get right in the middle here for this. Thank you. Shout out to my boy Benson helping me record here. So, starting position, where should you start, all right? A good place to start is when you get into position, you should be pretty much vertical, straight up and down with your shins. Benson, is that pretty vertical, straight up and down? Yeah. So when you get into position to pull, you're straight up and down, all right? So now you'll see some people, they'll be way out like this, which I'm not saying that's bad, this works for some people. And then you'll see other people that'll be in. Some people do all that too. Again, everyone's unique. However, I think for most people this isn't a good position to be in because, as you can see, if you're out like this, it's just not a very good position to be powerful. At least with a wider stance, you're shortening the range of motion when you go to lift. So if you can do this lift successfully, you won't have very far from the bar to travel, and some people do really well with that, but it can be really hard to control, especially on lockout. If you have a really short burst of range of motion, you'll be a little bit wobbly at the top. So back to external rotation of the hips. External rotation of the hips does matter for conventional too. It is important to try to externally rotate, but I feel like it almost goes doubly for sumo deadlifts. So what you'll see a lot of people do, and this was a big issue I used to have, and I'll try to find some old footage and see I try to show you what I'm talking about. But what you'll see people do is when they go to pull, they pull, you'll see their knees come in and their quads will come in because they're basically like squatting the deadlift and they're just trying to stand up with the weight instead of externally rotating at the hips and driving your hips through. So if you go to pull, and I'm going to try to do this, I don't know if it's going to work or not, if you pull and just stand up with the weight, watch my knees and watch my quads kind of cave in. So hopefully that worked. If not, I'll put something else up over it. But if you're doing it right, you externally rotate hard at the hips and almost think of like spreading the floor apart with your feet is one cue that works well for some people. And what you're going to do when you get into position is you're going to externally rotate here hard, spread that floor, and that weight's going to want to come up on its own. So instead, that time you should have seen there was almost no movement with my knees and hips. It just came up off the floor. So that's a big difference between the two. So what you got to keep in mind when you're transitioning from conventional to sumo, you got to get these hips open. All right? Well, obviously with conventional, you're straight up and down. You want to get these hips open. You want to get in here, drop your junk on the bar, all right? Seriously, get open so you can get close to that bar and you can get yourself in a good position to pull. Because a lot of people, when they switch conventional to sumo, they'll just walk up, keep everything forward, and then they'll just kind of go like this. Get open. It's going to make a huge difference. And then, like I said, externally rotate at the hips. But if you can't get open, you might have to work on your flexibility, but it's going to be really important to make sure that you're getting the knees out and getting these hips open. All right, another part with the setup to keep in mind with a sumo, a good starting position with your hands is going to be straight up and down. So when you go to grab the bar, it should be almost straight up and down from your shoulders. Now, some people will be a little bit in, some people will be a little bit out, and there's benefits and negatives to both. But again, this is a good starting position. The problem with coming out wide is essentially you're going to shorten your arms. And you want your arms to be as long as possible when you're doing the sumo deadlift. Because if your arms are longer, you're able to stay more upright and make the movement a little bit easier. So the more upright you are, the better, as long as your starting position doesn't get compromised. Now, for most people, a starting position from the side angle, don't worry about it, Benson, from the side angle is going to be with the bar through the middle of your foot and through your scapula when you're in position. You got to keep in mind, if you get really upright, but that bar is in front of you, when you go to pull, your weight's going to go forward and up. That bar is not going to come off the ground until you are in position. So get into position first, rather than making the bar force you into position. All right? That's the same for conventional too, but it's just a really important thing that a lot of people miss with the deadlift. All right, another big difference between conventional and sumo, you have to be patient off the floor with sumo deadlift. You cannot rush it. If you rush it, you will be dead with heavy weights, because what happens when you rush it, the only way to get that bar off the floor faster is to lock your knees fast. So if you lock your knees fast, that bar will fly off the ground. But what happens when you do that, imagine if this was heavy weight, I'm gonna lock my knees super early. Okay, then you're here. How are you gonna lock it out? Good luck, you're dead. It's gonna be nothing but back. So you have to make sure you do not lock your knees too soon. And you do that by being patient off the floor. You will see a lot of really good sumo deadlifters, it'll take almost a full second for that weight to come off the floor. But when it comes off the floor, it moves, it will go. All right, so for most people, if you can get that weight off the floor with sumo, you can lock it out. Now, not everybody, it depends on a lot of different things, including your structure. But it's just, I cannot stress enough how important it is to be patient off the floor with the sumo deadlift. Now, it's different with conventional because you still want to be patient and you still want to stay in position. The biggest thing with deadlift is staying in position. Most people miss a deadlift because they get out of position. But with conventional, if you get out of position, your base of support is right underneath you. All right, so you can fight and you can struggle and you can still potentially lock it out. But when you're with sumo, if you get out of position and your base of support is way out here and you need to try to struggle to lock out a heavy weight, good luck. You're not going to do it. You're just going to be dead. So those are the big difference between the two. If you are switching from conventional to sumo, keep these in mind. You're not going to get it right away. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some practice, but these tips should hopefully help you get there a little bit faster. If you have any questions at all, just leave comments in the comment section below and I will definitely get back to you. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.
I'm addicted to the love that you're giving. Every minute, every day I've been craving.